The clothing and textile industry is reaching a tipping point due to rapid production, extreme consumption, and unmanageable volumes of waste. When I was at Patel, I focused a lot on sustainable agriculture. So I was focused on big monocropped fields of soybean and wheat and all of that. There was one article I read at Patel when I was doing my research that also talked about cotton agriculture as part of the agricultural system. And even though I know cotton is a crop, it was a light bulb moment for me because I hadn't included cotton in any of my agricultural research. And it's a massive crop. It's a very thirsty crop. So much of our lives are cotton in terms of what we wear, what we sleep on, our house, our curtains, our towels, our bed sheets, so much of it. I have always been really interested in the agricultural system. And when I read that article, arguably the two things we do every day, eat and get dressed, come from the same system. And we are degrading that system rapidly with industrial agricultural practices in terms of big monocropped fields, overtilling, excessive pesticide use. And that was what I focused a lot on when I was a student at Patel. After I graduated, I became gradually more interested in sustainable fashion, and I started a bow tie business, and I had a home studio, and I was sewing, and I had all of these fabric scraps that I didn't know what to do with. And I remembered this article I read when I was a student about cotton being a crop and part of the agricultural system. And I was already composting my food waste. So I wondered, can I also compost this fabric scrap? So I started some experiments in my compost tumbler at home in my backyard. And it turns out that I could compost some of those fabric scraps. And I started in my backyard, and then in the tumbler, and then I went to a pile in the backyard, and then I went to a community garden in a smaller farm, and then eventually I ended up here at Rosebud because I needed more space to conduct some of these experiments in textile composting that I was doing. And so to date, I've been composting textiles for approximately 7 years since I did that first scrap in my compost tumbler back home in my backyard. To date, I have composted over 1,000 pounds of clothes. When I compost clothing, I'm also composting food waste. It's a very symbiotic relationship that I found. And so I've also composted over 5,000 pounds of food waste with the clothing, and I've created over 500 pounds of soil. Part of my research now, I have proof of concept that clothing can be composted, but what does it look like scaled up? So that's the question I'm trying to answer in this next chapter and in my next phase of research, which is also leading me to pursue a PhD. I feel like I've gone as far as I can as an independent researcher, and some stuff is beyond my capability. I need partnerships. I need more collaboration because it's a very collaborative process. One of the questions I get a lot is, are there any toxins leaching from the dyes of the clothes into the soil? I'm not a soil scientist. I don't have a background in that. So I can do a lot more research on that on my own and figure it out. But I think that's where collaborating with someone who does have that knowledge and expertise is a lot more meaningful, gives it another level of legitimacy. Of course, I'm still very legit as an individual, but no one is an expert in everything. So we need to share that knowledge. When it comes to clothing and textiles, there's no real infrastructure. This is something that I've been noticing a lot in my research lately. Thrift stores are the main infrastructure for managing clothing and textile waste. When I don't want anything anymore, I donate it. And I pat myself on the back because these poor people can use it. And then thrift stores, if you've been in one recently, they are inundated with clothing. There is no way they could possibly sell everything that they even receive. And because clothing waste has degraded in quality so much in the past 2 decades or so, with so many polycotton blends, shirts are much thinner, they don't last as long as they used to. So much of what gets donated to thrift stores is not even able to be sold on the floor or even shipped overseas. It has stains, it rips too easily, the quality just isn't there. So thrift stores still send so much to landfill even. So much of what we donate isn't even able to be used in those thrift stores. And we don't have any other real infrastructure for recycling or managing our clothing waste. Thrift stores are the main infrastructure. And while I love a good thrift store, we're not going to donate our way out of this problem. Up to 100 billion garments are created every year, and there's only 8.5 billion people on the planet. It's probably the only industry where supply far exceeds demand. Even if we stopped buying clothes right now, what do we do with all of the clothing waste that we already have? It's estimated that there's enough clothing waste circling the world to clothe the next 5 generations. So if I don't buy another article of clothing for the rest of my life, we still have all of this mountains of clothing. And when we donate to thrift stores, whatever they don't sell, they send to landfill or they ship it overseas. And it makes our problem someone else's problem. Africa receives a lot of donations, primarily Ghana. And then Chile in South America receives a lot of US donations. And in Chile, all of the clothes are ending up in a desert. It's the largest clothing dump site in the world. You can see it from space. In Ghana, it's the largest secondhand market in the world, but they can't sell everything they receive in donations. And so much is not even of good quality to be resold. So we're filling someone else's landfill and polluting their waterways. It's very NIMBYism, not in my backyard, to say, I don't want this over here, but I'm going to send my clothes to Africa because the poor people of Africa can use it. But the people of Africa are not poor. They are very rich. They have such a rich culture and incredible textiles. And by us continuing to donate our clothes in such high volumes is choking out foreign local economies. Not only is it damaging their environment in landfill and ending up in their waterways and having these very crude burn pits sometimes to manage the volume of clothing waste that they have, but it's choking out the foreign local economy. Why would you go to the local tailor or the local dressmaker or buy this amazing fabric from someone when you can go to this market and get a new dress for a fraction of the price? Even though so much of our clothing is synthetic or polyester blend material, by being able to compost the natural fiber, the percentage of clothing that is organic still puts a dent in the problem in a meaningful way and creates a really healthy product in terms of soil and compost at the end of the process that can be used back on our farms. Because compost is so nutrient dense, because I'm composting clothing with food, it has all of the vitamins and minerals. Compost is like a multivitamin for the earth. A lot of store-bought soil only has 3 nutrients. It's an NPK, potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen blend. If we as people had a diet of 3 nutrients, we would be so sick. And that's what we put on the earth in such high volumes, is this 3 nutrient blend soil. If we use compost instead, where it has zinc, vitamins A, B, C, iron, calcium, all of these other vitamins and minerals and nutrients, it feeds the earth, it feeds the plants in that environment a much more nutritious diet. They become much healthier. They protect us more as well. When we have healthier trees, healthier plants that are less prone to breakage, less prone to disease, less prone to elements, flooding, heat, etc., they're able to survive longer because they have this really healthy diet that makes them stronger, the same way we as people are more resistant to illness and injury when we have all of our nutrients and vitamins. So if we composted more, and if we use that compost, if we gave it back to the earth. Soil is one of our biggest carbon sinks outside of our oceans, and we keep depleting it with these unsustainable agricultural practices. It's a way to close the loop, in my opinion, by taking our organic waste that we're growing on these farms, in these fields, recycling it in a meaningful way in compost instead of landfill, and then returning it back to the farm, to the field in terms of fresh new soil. And now I'm in the process of looking into PhD programs and collaborating with others. I'm very interested in the role that policy plays in helping people reduce their waste. Because the clothing and textile problem is so massive, you and I can have the best of intentions for wanting to recycle our clothing. I compost my clothes here. You can bring your clothes here to compost. We can donate them, have clothing swaps, whatever. And even Patagonia is like the company, like the gold star for being a sustainable clothing company. And they have their worn wear program where they take back items, repair them, and then resell them at a lower price. And that's great. But Patagonia can't do that for clothes from Zara and H&M and Gap and all these other places. I cannot compost all the clothes. You and I can have the best of intentions. These companies who want to recycle their clothing waste and have their branded resale programs, they can have the best of intentions, but all of our best intentions are always going to fall short because we can't do it at scale because the problem is so much bigger than us. So what role does policy play in helping us achieve that? If the infrastructure is not there, if the support from the top down isn't there, I think our best intentions are always going to fall short. So now I'm interested in focusing on the infrastructure gap and how to address that in a meaningful way, which I think textile composting, but really municipal composting as a whole, can fill that gap.